Okay, we are going. Hey there, Nancy. Welcome to Pause and Rewind. You're my first episode for season 5, and it is wonderful to have you here.
That's exciting. Like new year, new episode.
All right, new year, new episode. And I've, been wanting to get a good conversation with you in for ages because we often get to work together on stuff. But actually, how many times do we get to sit down and have a good chat?
Yeah, no, you and me are like ships that pass in the night. We kind of do each other favors at the last minute whilst kind of running down a corridor in the other direction, metaphorically. So yes, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to going on a little boat trip into the subconscious with you.
Well, we're going to jump into it. And I'm going to start with the question that I ask all guests. And that is, what does the world look like for Nancy Kelley right now?
It looks pretty good. I live in Brighton with my wife and my 2 kids and my 2 dogs and my lizard. And I live in a little house on top of the hill, and I get to see, it's like living on the deck of a ship. You get to see all of the weather, which is kind of really beautiful. And I've a couple of months ago started a new job at Fantastic All Sorts, which is this amazing LGBT youth charity that provides support for LGBTQ plus youth all over Sussex, but also provides support for their parents so they can be kind of welcoming and safe homes. And then we work with schools and other organisations to make them safe for LGBTQ plus youth. So that feels like amazing. People should check us out. You can fundraise for us. You can volunteer for us. You should check us out at allsortsyouth.org.uk. So we've got this like really quite beautiful, quite kind of sort of quietly joyful life at the minute. It's good. It's too cold, but it's good.
I mean, and imagine being on the coast, you really feel the cold.
It is. It's also because we are literally we're on one of the highest points in Brighton. And it's so when it's windy, as it has been for the last couple of days, it is proper, like you feel like you're on a trawler in a gale sort of thing. But it is also kind of really cool. That aspect of it is really cool. Quite exciting.
I love being by the coast regardless of the weather. I find there's something so refreshing and therapeutic about it.
Agree. So when we were still living in London, so I lived in London for decades. If I was having like a really bad week or a really bad day, my wife would just literally pop me in the car and drive me to Camber Sands and like sit me on a blanket where I could see and listen to the sea. And like after about an hour, it would kind of like I'd reboot and I'd be like, oh yeah, ready to go again. So getting to live by the sea is such, I grew up by the sea, and getting to live by the sea again is such a privilege. It's incredible.
And you're from Lincolnshire, right? Like that kind of area.
Yeah. So I'm from Grimsby, which has been gerrymandered in and out of various counties. So yes, I'm a working class girl from Grimsby. So I grew up in a very different seaside than the one that I live in now.
Absolutely. I mean, I lived in Louth for quite a time, so I know Grimsby,
you know what you're talking.
Cleethorpes, that area very, very well. So a big shift from that to London.
Rough part of Grimsby to up on a hill in Brighton. It's not it's not quite the same way of living by the seaside.
No, of course. It has been quite a couple of years for you, right? In terms of kind of like the shifts that you've had. You've kind of, moved from Stonewall through to doing stuff with Diva. You've been involved in the Trans Solidarity Alliance. You've now got your move to All Sorts. Throughout that time, you've been battling illness and navigating life with a disability. That's a lot for one person to go through over such a couple of years, on top of a big life move from in a city to the coast.
Yes.
When you think of that, when you think of everything you've been through over the last couple of years, how do you process and comprehend all of that?
I'm not sure I do. Okay. I would say sort of like in terms of work, it's been amazing to be able to help build Trans Solidarity Alliance. I still work, it's all volunteer organisations, so I get to still be part of that. That's part of my continuity. So kind of I'm an All Sorts Trans Solidarity Alliance babe these days, if that makes sense. I think that kind of the Stonewall job was just wild. And I think it took quite a long time to just kind of feel like I had my feet on the ground after going through that sort of few years. But I feel like and Diva was just such a wonderful, nurturing place to kind of land after that. And huge fan of Linda Riley in particular, who's a friend of mine, who was just brilliant. So I sort of feel like professionally it's sort of quite straightforward, even though there was like a hell of a job in there somewhere. I think the process, so I was diagnosed with cancer just after I moved with lymphoma, actually, type of lymphoma, just after I moved to Brighton, actually. And so kind of going through having cancer, I was treated for cancer successfully. But I've been left quite disabled. And so that thing about kind of going from not having a disability to having a disability, which is quite limited. So I basically can't breathe very well. So if I'm moving around, or if I'm like trying to do exercise, I use like ambulatory oxygen, which is like oxygen you walk with, and I use a rollator, which is like a Zimmer frame on wheels. I'm obsessed with them. So I'm quite disabled. And what I think about that, like, I feel very lucky to be alive. I could really easily have not been alive with the cancer that I had. I feel quite at peace with my body as it is, and I feel really lucky for that. Like, I don't feel a lot of like anger or grief about being disabled. I don't know if that's because I'm not processing it right now, but it feels like I feel quite peaceful. But it is really different. Like, it is really different to go from being, I can't run upstairs. I can walk upstairs. I can't really walk more than a block. So even at work, right, where I'm used to, you know me, Neil, I used to be someone that would like zip around constantly. I can't do that. And it's interesting. It's also interesting in what happens when you're slower. So I notice things much more. I have like a really deep relationship with kind of the trees in the local park that I very slowly walk around with my dogs and kind of watch them go through the seasons in a way that I just wouldn't even have noticed. So it's not all loss, right? It's just some of it is difference. There's a chunk of loss. There's a big chunk of just different, and then some of it is gain. I think, I don't know. It's strange. I'm still processing it. Ask me in 5 years.
I mean, I feel like you're processing in real time, because as much as the public Nancy that we know and love now, your advocacy and your activism and your work has been LGBTQ plus centered. We are seeing you processing life with a disability, and you're sharing more and more about that. And I wonder what you have learned about what's the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself in the process.
So it's interesting. So I'm deliberately very out. I've always been out about being queer. I've been out about being kind of a working class person, or that kind of thing. I'm deliberately very out. I was out while I had cancer, and I'm trying to talk about life as a disabled person or as a disabled kind of worker and those sorts of things as well. So that's all dead right. I think the biggest thing that I've learned or that I've discovered is how kind of pervasive so there's things, if you're kind of a human rightsy person like me or you think you understand things like disability, right? You think you get it. I thought I got it to a degree. And I really didn't, because I had no idea of just how pervasive the dehumanisation of disabled people is until I was visibly disabled. And what I mean by that is like, it's little things like nobody meets your eye.
Okay.
Nobody looks at you. If you're walking around and you're visibly disabled, children do, small children. But I would say like 95% of adults will not meet your eye in a normal way. And that's so weird.
Yes.
And particularly because if I'm sitting still, I'm not disabled. Like, I don't seem disabled right now because I don't need more air, right? And so I still get to experience normal eye contact. And then I move around and suddenly people can see I've got like a nasal cannula or something like that. So I think I've been really like, wow, this is everywhere and everyone and everything. And like the streets aren't accessible and the buildings aren't accessible and work isn't accessible and everybody acts like it's your fault and people won't look at you and people get mad at you. People get really cross when you're on a mobility scooter. I've got this amazing 3-wheeler that when it's not icy, I use. And people literally act like you are the devil for taking up space as a disabled person. So that has been like revelatory. That has been like...
Yeah. And how do you feel about advocating for yourself in such a way? Because I've seen you, advocate for yourself as a queer person. I've seen you advocate for yourself as a working parent as well. The kids have popped up on calls and you've made
you have to deal with it. Yeah.
You've made no apologies about it. The kids are part of my life and such. Have you found that easy advocating for yourself because of that experience, or has it been a whole new ballgame?
It's a mix of both, right? So I'm just bad-minded. So I'm bad-minded and I think I'm worthwhile. So I'm naturally sort of reasonably inclined to be like, no, I am not going to do the thing. But there is still a massive learning curve for me. So I'll kind of give a real example. So I have a history professionally of public speaking. And I've been asked, since I've been disabled, I've been asked a few times to keynote. And on more than one occasion, I've had people come to me and say, I really want you to keynote. You're exactly the person we need. I've said, I'm happy to do it. I need to do it remotely, or you need to be able to like accommodate me, because I can't just, get on a train for 3 hours. I can't do that. And I've had people literally ghost me. People that I've like worked with for years, who know me in real life, because they felt uncomfortable saying, actually, we can't be asked dealing with your accommodation request. And there's things like that where I'm just like, I'm not sure quite how to deal with this without going nuclear. So I think there's a lot of things where I feel like I'm doing all right. The kind of, I need this, or that doesn't work for me, or I am going to do it this way, the sort of day-to-day stuff. But some of it is just so egregious. You're like, I haven't quite figured out how to stand up for myself without starting a fight in some of that space. Yeah. So it's a bit of a work in progress.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes to show that if people are doing that to someone like you with such a profile in what you do and such, what's happening to other people that don't have those relationships? And
yeah, for reals. I mean, I wrote a post on LinkedIn recently that was about what it's like trying to get a job as a disabled senior executive.
Yeah.
And I always knew that I wanted to write about the experience once I had safely found a job and was like tucked into it, because it was so crackers. It was people telling me, hide your disability. It was guaranteed interview schemes that didn't interview me. I came to realize that the disability confidence scheme, like in disabled people's world, they just say never ask for an interview on disability confidence, because you literally never get one. That's the word on the street, right? I had, it was just wildness. And one of the main reasons that I wanted to be out about it is because a lot of disabled CEOs in our sector, in the kind of voluntary community sector, aren't out as having a disability, one. And two, all I could think about is that's me as someone that had the privilege of an entire working lifetime to build up a really good CV before I became disabled. But if I had always been this disabled, I'd have been screwed. I mean, a working class girl, I got a good degree. I probably wouldn't have got a first job. That's literally what happens to people. And so it felt like really important to kind of share because of those sorts of reasons. But it's that kind of piece that I said, it's like, you think you understand the kind of politics of disability and sort of the kind of social and cultural oppression of disabled people. But my God, I really didn't.
Yeah. The lived experience element of it, and the day to day,
wow.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, if we're going through a lot, like to anyone else, like you are still zipping about all over the place. I know life might be a bit slower. And I do want to take a moment to talk about your work with Trans Solidarity Alliance, right? Because it is phenomenal, and you continue to maintain that all through everything you were going through. And
at one point I was actually in inpatient treatment on a cancer ward, like doing like email.
And I know, and having worked with you on a few bits and pieces, I saw you in Parliament. when lots were going on,
running a mass lobby,
running a mass lobby, which was crazy. I mean, how joyful is it to see Trans Solidarity Alliance go from strength to strength, and your role in that, and your role as an ally in that, and drawing on all your skills and your experience. It is a joy to see.
I mean, it's the most incredible thing to be part of, and it's a very small group of us. Yeah. The joke is it's kind of 5 trans people and Nancy in a trench coat. That's what we say to each other. And we sort of take it in turns whose head is poking out the top of the trench coat. And everybody's a volunteer. And everything is like kind of high trust, high communication, total chaos, right? So we managed to achieve things because we just trust each other a lot and really run at the wall. Like it's very, I think people see the outside and think it's some kind of slick operation. And we're like, no, it's not slick. It's people with lots of skills that are really committed, but we're all working around our jobs and our families and our lives. And we're all very, it's just like a super active WhatsApp group, right? So, and the people and the friendships within that group are just incredible. And to have been able to do these really big things, so kind of running the biggest LGBT lobby, we think maybe ever, but certainly since the 80s, to have played such a key part in really pushing back against EHRC's draft code of practice, those things feel amazing. And kind of the way that we as a group of people, we just kind of hold hands and run at the wall, right? And then the wall moves a bit. And so we hold hands again and run again. So it just feels very kind of, it's a story about what a small group of committed individuals can do, right? And it's so amazing to be part of that, you know?
Yeah. And the friendships, I mean, particularly yours and Jude's relationship is absolutely beautiful. And, you know, and just be, you know, for me, just lipping in and being involved with certain things, whether it's supporting with an online event or doing Trans Secret Santa. It was my first year doing it
Oh
in
my God, I was so
December.
sad not to be there as an elf this year.
Well, I loved being an elf, and it was just such a beautiful day. So it's making such a difference. If anyone out there is listening and thinking, you know, how can I get more involved as an ally? Because obviously, you know, allyship is a huge part of you and how you show up in the world, particularly your trans allyship. What would you say to them in terms of taking those first steps?
So I guess I would say two things. So one is, you don't have to have perfect understanding to be a good ally. You know, you don't have to have like a PhD in trans people's lives and rights. I don't have a PhD in trans people's lives and rights, and I certainly bloody didn't when I started being very closely engaged in this work. And the same would be true around disability or, you know, you don't have to be an expert. That's not what it's about. It's not a sort of technical process. The second thing I would say, it's about doing things. So I think one of the things that a lot of people fall into is kind of going through a learning process where they want to talk to a trans person. If you're cisgender, you want to talk to a trans person about all the things you're learning about trans people. That is not helping the trans person. That is making the trans person do work. You could just go away and read it and maybe talk to your cis friends and family about it, which would be more helpful. So people go into this sort of, I want to do a lot of chatting about it phase, which is, I think it's important that we learn and we keep learning, but it's about doing things. So you can donate to organizations that are doing good work. You don't have to create new things. Give money to, you know, trans-led organizations or disability-led organizations or any kind of buy-in. If you're interested in an issue, donate to buy-in for organizations, right? Like that's a great thing to do. Even if you've got enough for a cup of coffee, it's helpful. You can volunteer. And I think you and I are big volunteers. So, you know,
huge advocate for it. Like, yes.
Volunteer as quickly as someone shakes a stick at us. But you can volunteer time and kind of remember that the thing you're most useful for is the thing you're good at, not the thing you want to do. So like you might like the idea of painting someone's kind of office space for them, but unless you are an interior decorator, that is not what they need from you. If you are an accountant, that's probably quite useful, even though it's boring. So kind of you can volunteer your time, and everybody's got skills and experience and value they can bring to the table for some organizational community group in that space. And I think there's just the really day-to-day stuff, like when you see or hear somebody being oppressive or discriminatory, do something. Like just say something. Do something. If you don't feel safe, you can talk to the person who's being targeted. You know, I think people always feel like it has to be some big kind of confrontational process. It doesn't, but stand up. That's what allyship is. It's not kind of talking about something, it's doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for us, for people that are in the know, these kind of things sound obvious, but there are many people who actually don't know where to start. So it's important that we give them those stepping stones. And I have to say, before we jump into your origin story, one of my highlights of last year was being nominated for Trans Ally, but in the Trans in the City Awards. And I know that
was so much fun.
We don't do it for that reason, but it was really beautiful to be recognised and to be alongside yourself and Lila, in that shortlist was such a magical moment. And obviously we all love and respect each other so much. And I think we've all commented on the fact of this is what cheerleading really looks like.
It was just, I don't think anybody's ever been nominated for prizes and done so much like yaying about the other people. We were all just like yaying each other in the kind of run up. Also, we're all parents of pugs. I think that's got something to do with it as well.
This is true.
No, I think that was really lovely, and just feeling like, and also that we're all people that have worked together and helped each other as well. Yes. So kind of links back to that kind of allyship is a doing piece.
Yes.
You know, Lila and you and I have all sort of helped each other in different ways and volunteered alongside each other and kind of bumped into each other in all kinds of different ways on the mean streets of trying to show up for our trans family. So it just felt really kind of fun and quite lovely, quite moving that we were all kind of nominated together.
It was, and I felt like, and damn right that you scooped it, right? Like 100%. But and also there was that mindset of I'm up against Nancy, like fuck. But I already felt like I'd won just by being in that category with yourself and Lila. Like that was just they made my year.
It was lovely. It was a really lovely evening. It was really
It was
lovely.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah. And to see so many of our amazing colleagues and people getting recognised and be part of that was beautiful. Nancy, I'm so excited to dive into your origin story. With that,
This is all the stuff you don't know. What might I say, Neil?
Here we go. With that, are you ready to pause and rewind?
Yes.
Here we go. Take me back. Tell me all about little Nancy.
So I come from Grimsby. I come from a working class family in Grimsby and quite a difficult background. So my mum had mental health problems and struggled with addiction and I sometimes like to say I'm a member of the Bad Mother Club, by which I don't mean she had a hard time. I mean, she was pretty awful. So kind of my childhood was quite tough. I spent a lot of time outside. I spent a fair amount of time without enough food, sometimes without light, a lot of neglect and things like that. But I was also always very me. So I had like this massive imaginary, I'm an obsessive reader, was then, still am. I read multiple books a week, still, always have. So I had this like huge imaginary as a child, the just vibrant world that I occupied. And I used to kind of pretend to be all kinds of fun stuff. I used to pretend to have superpowers and be a fairy and all sorts of good stuff like that. But I went through a long stage of pretending to be an estate agent. No, a travel agent. Not sure what that was about.
Was there a sense of escapism about all of those things?
No. I think it was mostly because I thought that they had computers that they used and we were too poor to have even like a basic computer. And so I used to like write things on like an index card and put the index card under the record player and pretend it was a computer that was printing out holiday suggestions.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant.
I've no idea why I was a travel agent, but I was a travel agent. So I sort of I had this like world, right? It was great.
Hard to relate on actually a lot of that. And the reason I ask about escapism is because I also had fairly tough childhood in terms of custody battles and such. And I also had a very vibrant imaginary world, and I would often pretend to be a wizard, and I would read a lot and escape. So I've always wondered, did I do that as a form of escapism?
I mean, I definitely did, but I do it still. I daydream all the time. Like I carried it straight through. I don't think that's for childhood. I think imagination is for life, not for Christmas.
Yeah. In terms of that experience of having a mother that wasn't the most loving and going through that, again, hard to relate. How much of that has shaped you as a mother?
Jesus. So it's a big question. So for a long time, I swore I would never have kids.
Okay.
Because I was so terrified that I would be like my mum. I should say there is a person in my life that I call my mum now. She is my stepmum. I am not talking about her. She's great. Okay. my biological mum, my birth mum is dead, and that's who I'm talking about. So for a long time, I just couldn't even contemplate taking the risk that I would do that to children. And then, ironically, my biological clock turned on. My children were adopted, but anyway, I desired children. So weirdly, I feel like I bring some of what was good about my mum. So my mum was very imaginative, and I bring some of that to the table. I think that it has made my childhood experience has made me very clear that my children, need to feel safe. So I'm super consistent with them. They call me homework witch because I'm the one that's like, now we do homework. And like, I'm very consistent and I'm very reliable and I'm very safe. And I think all of that comes from my childhood of having inconsistent, unreliable, unsafe parenting. Because I'm quite a freewheeling person in my own self. And I do have that with my kids, but there is just a real core of reliability, consistency, kind of predictability, safety, those sorts of things. I think that really, really comes from a reaction to what I experienced.
Yeah. Sometimes that fear of turning into what you don't want to be does keep you in check. It does keep you in check and accountable to yourself. Taking it back to little Nancy, are there any favourite anecdotes that you've heard about yourself growing up?
Oh God, yeah. Well, so I'll tell you one of my favourites because I think it sort of expresses something that's very true about my personality on some level. Before we moved up north when I was like 3. We lived on a big council estate in Farnham.
Okay.
And I have 3 much older brothers, and they made me for Christmas. So we had nothing. I was proper poor, go without food poor, right? And my eldest brother, who I worshipped like a god, made me an ambulance in like carpentry class at school. He became a carpenter actually. So he's very good, always very good at that, good with his hands. So he was only a young teenager. And it was like a go-kart, but he painted it red and it was an ambulance. And then my present for Christmas, so this is it, right? I get one present for Christmas, was a nurse's outfit from my mum and dad. So basically for the whole following year, I would only either wear only knickers, so big white waisties, and I would run around naked with the waisties on the estate, or the nurse's outfit, Nurse Nancy. And I sort of used the power of my persuasiveness. I had a small gang of slightly older kids that sort of did my bidding for reasons I'm not sure about, but go with me. And I was the nurse, and I would make them push me around in this bloody thing, by all counts. And one of them stood on a piece of glass and cut their foot quite badly. And I was like, we are not involving the adults, right? Nurse Nancy's going to deal with it. And eventually my dad found us in our shed, and I'd like wrapped some kind of like horrible rag around this kid's openly bleeding foot, and was sat there like being like, I've got it covered. Nurse Nancy's got it covered. So I've actually got a picture of myself in that outfit next to my ambulance, and which is on the wall. And I think it sort of says a lot about my personality type and how long that's been in place, really. So yeah, Nurse Nancy.
Nurse Nancy, but no desire to go into nursing in the later years.
Yeah, no, I think it was more about power, and it was the power of the thing, right? Because obviously I was not providing adequate medical care for that small child, or indeed doing anything remotely safe. I was like, I am in charge of your injury. Yeah.
That is a brilliant anecdote. And take me through school. What was school like as an experience for you, particularly against that backdrop of, growing up, not having tons of money, childhood being quite tough? What was school then like? Did school give you a little bit of reprieve from that? What was your sense of self around it?
Sort of a funny thing. It was a sort of mixed thing for me, school. So my dad was a teacher and had a really strong ethic about education. And I've always loved learning, loved it, and still do. And so on the one hand, school was this place where I succeeded, like it was like falling off a log. I could always do well at school. Teachers always thought that the work that I did was great, that kind of stuff. And on the other hand, it was just, I experienced, quite bad bullying, very bad bullying, really. And so I was going into school, and there for quite a few chunk of years, quite a few years, I would have been like visibly dirty, right? So really kind of bad neglect, and I might not have eaten, and then I would get A's. So I was like super popular, as you can understand, Neil. There I was, like looking like Stigger the Dump, as people sometimes used to call me, but I could do the work really, really well. And so it was it was a really mixed space. Teachers tended to be really on my side in primary school, and then kids not so much. And then in secondary school, I learnt to defend myself really and went completely off the rails. So by the end of my school career, I wasn't attending at all.
Right.
For a couple of years, really.
How did that manifest itself, and how did people show up and acknowledge that shift? Did your parents intervene? Did anyone try and get you back on the rails?
So I moved from my mum to my dad when I was 13. My dad and mum had split up. And had a really volcanic relationship with my dad and my stepmom. I was truanting super heavily. I ran away from home when I was 15. I was homeless in London for about a year. I was taking a lot of drugs. I was drinking. The only person who really made a difference was my friend Brian. He was my boyfriend for about a year and a half, but he was my friend and still is the only friend I've got from back then. And I feel like Brian was like my first experience of unconditional love, like someone who just loved me.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, one of the things that combined with the fact that I'm just good at school, so I could go through all of that shit and still get into university, were the things that kind of got me through. Nothing else, no adults really were.
Yeah. Retrospectively, have you had any conversations about that time with parents or adults?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of conversations over the years. My dad actually, sadly, who I was very, very close to, my dad actually died last year. But over the years, he and I had talked about it a lot. And he used to sort of say, he was incredibly proud of me and used to sort of say, you raised yourself. You should never have had to raise yourself, but you did raise yourself. And he didn't love talking about it, but over the years in dribs and drabs, we sort of processed it kind of collectively, I guess. For me now, when I look back, it's so kind of foundational to who I am, but also it's a real asset. So when I meet people in my life who are really struggling or who are on the outskirts of society in different ways, I don't struggle to empathize, and I find it, I think, a bit easier not to judge because I don't feel that different, even though my life now is really, really different. I've been kind of, the not respectable working class. I've been the kid that everybody avoids. I've been the teenager cussing and shouting at people in the street for looking at them. I've been that. I've been those things, and I've been close to sort of falling off the edge of having a life that was easy. I've had a pretty easy life in lots of ways, great life, but I very nearly didn't. And so I think it makes you see the world through. I think when you have that kind of background, and I don't know if you feel the same, you go one of two ways, I think, in my experience. You either go, I'm a magical special fairy princess and I'm so great that I was able to bootstrap myself and it's all about me. Or you realise that actually you've just been bloody lucky. Yeah. So I fought really hard to get out of where I started, but everybody fights hard to get out of a shitty place. It's not people are lazy. It's not people that get trapped in those places didn't try hard enough. It's that you have to be lucky. You have to also be lucky. And I was also lucky. And so I think that perspective has been enormously valuable to me in life in terms of understanding the world and the people in it.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a lot of there's a lot of gratitude for those opportunities that have enabled you to get you to where you are now. I guess when you think about how it could have ended up, how do you feel about your life now? Could you ever have imagined back then?
I was going to be dead.
Right.
So I was a teenager. I'm 15. I'm in a squat in London. I'm being, in new money, we would call it sexually exploited. I was being used to do county lines. I was drinking. I was taking quite a lot of drugs. I wouldn't have bet on me.
Yeah.
Right. I had, no expectation that I would have. I thought and would say, I thought I wouldn't make it through my 20s. That's what I thought. Yeah. And that was partly kind of dramatic, kind of teenage, but it was partly like, it wouldn't have been that unusual. And it certainly is. I'm enormously fortunate to have had this life full of interest and joy and positiveness and safety, right?
Yes. Yes.
Amazing.
It's amazing when fortunate. It's amazing when you're in that and that is your daily. And I think I was in that, to a point. There was safety around me and I had support network around me, right? But I was definitely in that haze of not being able to imagine beyond a certain point, and with very limited aspirations and stuff as well. Yeah. And my sobriety plays a big part of that. Yeah.
No, I think it is something that I remember years ago reading a research study, and you know me a bit, so I'm a horrible geek. And it was about kind of aspirations, and it was young people's aspirations, which is this kind of awful idea that kind of adults do where they go, you're not imagining yourself hard enough out of poverty. And it was on this big housing estate that's on the outskirts of Cardiff. I forget what it's called, but it's a huge housing estate. And basically, the two things that kids said that they could imagine changing their life was becoming a sort of sports star, footballer, or winning the lottery. And I remember when it came out, this study, there was a lot of kind of slightly sneery, kids of today don't want to work. And that wasn't what it was about, right? Like if you're in a really difficult circumstance, it is really difficult to imagine a radically different future for you. If your mum or your dad or your nana that you live with, doesn't work, really struggles, might have addictions, might be disabled, you live in a really poor area, you don't see people around you having good jobs, by which I mean jobs where you don't have to constantly worry about money, it's really hard to imagine a different life. And so I couldn't, and it doesn't surprise me that you found it hard. I think it is really hard to imagine a different life, and then to imagine yourself into it, that different life exists and is for you.
Yeah.
I get why people find that really tricky.
Yeah. I mean, Dr. Runks talks about it all the time, right? You can't be what you don't.
Cannot
You
be what you
only
don't see.
see. Yeah,
Uh,
exactly that. With that in mind, I'm actually really curious as to when realizations and acceptance around your sexuality came into it.
Interesting, pretty late. So I'm a late bloomer.
Okay.
I think I was mid-20s, like maybe 25, 26. I don't think I'd super suppressed anything, but my relationships with sexes and romantic relationships had been just kind of transactional, right? So I came from a world in which nobody expected you to enjoy getting off with your boyfriend. I'm kind of that generation, right?
Just the done thing.
If just you did, a good boyfriend was a boyfriend that bought you a nice Valentine's card, right? Not anything else. And I'd been through all of this guff. And so kind of, I've not really thought about it, basically. I hadn't thought about it. It's not great sign. And I started a new job. And I was at an induction session and I saw my first girlfriend across the room. And I work for a young people's charity now, so I'm not going to describe, frankly, what I thought. But anyway, I was clear that I was interested in meeting that woman.
Okay.
And it was
just like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just to realize, just boom.
Yeah. I want to have sex with that person. Yeah. And I'm not, my dad was like a hippie, right? So I'm not particularly hung up about those sorts of things. And then also I had been through so much crap by the time I was in my mid-20s to have come out of it. I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to. And so this poor woman, whose name I won't mention, who'd always been a lesbian, unlike me, was completely kind of baffled by me because I proceeded to pursue her. And she thought, I'm getting it wrong. This is like you got to imagine sort of super femmy me, long hair, ostensibly completely straight, like just pursued her like a missile. And she was like terrified she was going to kind of get in some kind of grievance at work for, disturbing a straight girl. Yeah. That was it.
It's such a great story. And I guess it might surprise people when you think about the sectors and how out you are, that was the turning point, obviously, but that was the realization moment.
Yeah, a lot of people assume that I kind of always knew that I was queer, and I just didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, weirdly, this is stupid because of course I did actually fancy girls.
Yeah.
When I was younger, but I just never thought about it. It's the only way I can put it to you.
Yeah.
I just never processed it as a thing until I did. And then I processed it as a thing and went, oh, okay then. Hilarious, the story I always tell is I rang my dad and my girlfriend at the time, I just started dating her and she was like, tell your family, she's absolutely panicking, She's been pursued by me, given up, we were dating and I was immediately like telling everybody and she was like trying to do all of this kind of like, no, it's fine if you're not ready to come out. And I was like, I'm a lesbian everywhere I went. And then I rang my dad. She was like, don't tell your family. I was like, I'm just going to ring my dad and tell him. And she was like, but what if they disown you? And I literally said, fuck them. Like, I've been through so much stuff. I'm not taking any more shit. This is who I am. Here we go. And so I rang my dad, God love him. And he said, and he meant it. This was his genuine reaction was, oh, that's nice. You'll get to meet lots of interesting new people.
What a reaction. If only every...
No, I wish that for every LGBTQ plus person.
That is...
My mum, not so much, but my dad had a canonically great reaction to me coming out to him.
That is fantastic. And actually, you talk about your relationship with your dad, and that actually says so much about that relationship anyway. And I wonder, I guess looking back at you, just obviously before that, just had so much going on that there maybe wasn't the headspace to even...
I didn't have the I just don't think I had the bandwidth. Like, he'll never listen to this, so I feel like I can say I had a boyfriend when I was like, I would have been 14, so just before I ran away, so 14 to 15. And while we were being intimate, she said, being polite, I would visualize his sister. And it still never occurred to me, Neil, that I was not a heterosexual. I wasn't like traumatized about it. I wasn't like upset about it. I did not process this in any way.
Changing topics slightly, this all happened, you said, while you were working at a youth charity. And I wonder what early career looked like for you. What were those first steps into,
what did I do?
Not necessarily, maybe jobs, but also kind of career?
So I kind of accidentally fell into my ideal career, which is working in the community and voluntary sector. I knew that I wanted to make a difference. I knew I wanted to make the world a bit better. I'd been exposed to one version of how the world could be bad.
Yeah.
And the idea that you could actually support yourself trying to make the world a bit better is still actually amazing to me, that you can put food on the table whilst doing something that feels ethically and morally good. And I just think that's an amazing thing. So I kind of by accident got a job in a charity for my very first job, and then it was kind of love at first sight. But for years and years and years, and still, I've always volunteered as well. And I think quite often when people have met me over the years and have said, "Oh, I want a job like yours. How do I get it?" And then I go, "Then I did the following 11 billion things for free, and I did it for years." There's quite often a bit of horror when you say that to people, but I'm like,
Yeah.
babe, it's called the voluntary sector for a reason. So a lot of the most amazing kind of work-based experiences I have had in my career have been unpaid. And like everything from, I had this amazing phase where I was running a youth group for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. All the funding got cut, so me and some other volunteers just carried on running it. So we ran a youth group like with literally no money, and a local charity said we could use their room. All sorts of stuff. I volunteered for a long time I worked at Oxfordshire Mind as an advice worker really early in my career, and working in mental health is incredible and was transformational. But I also at the same time volunteered doing inpatient advocacy. So I would go and sit on wards and support people who were trying to get off section or get off medication and things like that. So some of the most amazing, I've been privileged to do amazing jobs, and to do jobs that I feel, whether I'm right or not, I don't know, but to do jobs that I feel are designed to make the world a bit kinder, a bit fairer. But actually some of the most amazing things I've ever done have been voluntary, including Trans Solidarity Alliance, right? So yeah, it's an amazing sector to work in and volunteer in, if that's where your heart lies.
For sure. And it's enriched my life in ways that
Yeah.
I never knew possible. Was there a light bulb moment that you thought, actually, this is where I want to be?
Yeah, but I'm a voluntary sector baby. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think by the time I was at Oxfordshire Mind, so I left university, I was in the States for a year, and I worked at a charity, Rose Resnick Lighthouse for the Blind. And that felt temporary. I knew I loved it, but I didn't know I was going to live in that world forever. And then I came back and temped for a bit, and eventually got my first sort of permanent UK gig at Oxfordshire Mind. And I was sort of half admin, so typing minutes and things like that, at which I'm still really good. I did a set of minutes this morning, actually. I still muck in on admin.
Oh gosh, it's a skill. It's a skill.
It's a whole skill, keeping good notes. It was half admin and half advice work, open access advice work with people experiencing mental distress, mental health problems, etc. And it was just amazing. And I think I knew then, I was like, this is the stuff. You can touch other people's lives in a way that has the potential to make them a bit easier, even if it's only a little bit easier, and even if it's only that day. And that is magical, absolutely magical. And I think at the time, and to a degree still, like, it was just really clear to me that it was a different relationship than the relationship statutory services had. So I think I knew then I was going to be a voluntary sector baby.
Yeah. I wonder if, looking back at your career, which is, such a rich career, was there a moment that perhaps felt like a failure that turned out to be the making of the Nancy we know now?
Felt like loads of failures. In fact, so many, it's kind of hard to pick out one.
Which is how it should be.
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's where the growth comes from.
Yeah, I think there's no one thing that I would point to, but there is a kind of whole series of things that I would point to, which is that the experience of leading and managing people is one that I find very humbling. I think if you asked people that have been managed by me or led by me, they would mostly say nice things. But I get a lot of things wrong, and I still get a lot of things wrong. And I feel like my learning curve around managing and leading and collaborating, the people collaborating to do a thing part of it, over the years, I've got so many things wrong. And I think that I think the saving grace is that I've learned, right? Like, and so if, to the degree that I am at this point a better manager and a better leader, it's because I've been taught by my own mistakes. And I think that, I feel very, in a good way, humbled by that experience every day, actually. Got something wrong last week.
Hey, yeah, mine feels like a weekly thing at the moment, but we have to go there. And within that teaching and learning, has there been someone that has shaped you the most along?
Yes. So when I worked at Oxfordshire Mind, there was a woman there called Jane Hope. I might cry talking about her, sorry.
No, don't apologise.
So Jane was a lot older than me. So she would have been, I mean, I thought like she was nearly dead then, but she was probably my age. So I'm in my early 50s. I think she was probably in her early 50s then, right? And she had founded Oxfordshire Mind. So she had created the whole thing from the start. And by the time I joined it, it had like 15 services all over Oxfordshire. It had a supported housing project for women. I mean, it was incredible. It was a huge organisation doing it worked, and it worked with some of the most vulnerable populations. It wasn't doing the easy work. And she wasn't the CEO because she'd never wanted to be the CEO. So she'd built every bit of the organisation and was still building it. And she was the services manager. And she was just this incredible person. So she's kind of from a Methodist background, kind of middle-class Methodist background, enormous kind of service ethic, really sort of thoughtful, very dry sense of humour. So different from me in so many ways, you know, me very sort of chatty and loud and working class, and her very quiet and middle class and Oxfordy, and we became incredibly close. And she was the first person I knew that made me feel like I knew what it would look like for me I could see a path in front of me to a form of adult womanhood that I would be proud to be. You know, we talked right at the beginning about being scared to be my mum. I was scared to be my mum, not just as a mother. I was scared to be my mum as a person.
Yeah, I understand.
And so having an adult woman role model who I just went, do you know what? I can see the path beneath my feet for the first time. If I'm anything like you, I'm going to be happy. And she had so much, she learned from her mistakes all the time. She was so humble. I mean, I was like, know nothing, just started right at the beginning of my career. She built this thing. She treated me like an equal. She went through the process of losing her dad and like kind of let me comfort her. It was such an incredible process. You know, she's so dignified. I didn't know what to say. So I just every morning I used to bring her little presents. I remember her favourites where I found some furry hamster stickers and left her there for them. You know, kind of just like leaving little gifts kind of thing. But she completely, I don't look up to many people. I admire many people, but I don't have like heroes, or that's not really how I'm like wired psychologically. But God, that woman shaped me, and she was a friend to the end of her life.
And did she know how you felt?
Oh God, yeah. And found it horribly embarrassing whenever I told her. The last time I saw her, which was she died a few years ago, sadly. And the last time I saw her before she died, I went to see her in Oxford with my friend Hannah, who is another baby that was raised by Jane. Jane's got a whole group of babies that she kind of made, work babies, as well as she has children, real life children. And, you know, tried to talk to her about it again. And she was just like, well, do be quiet, Nancy. Just because she was just so modest. Like she saw me as much more impressive than her. She felt like she'd learned as much from me, if not more. But she was incredible, an incredible woman, and her legacy stretches and stretches. So everybody that worked with her and loved her go out for a walk 3 times a year. I can't go because I can't walk very far, because she just had such a profound impact on so many people.
Beautiful to hear about her legacy. Big up, Jack.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. My final question for this segment is, looking back, what are you most proud of to date so far?
I'm a good mum. Yeah. Not a perfect one, but I'm a good one.
And I've only kind of met Dinka, you know, online, and just their energy and personality really, really shines through. And bucket loads.
Yes.
And so when you see that consistency and safety that you talk about, how does that make little Nancy feel?
I was talking to my therapist about this recently. I feel like I get to I feel like it's a bit like I get to sit down on a bench next to her, you know? You can't go back in time and undo things. And if you did, you'd be a completely different person. Yeah. But there is a sort of feeling of togetherness and a feeling of like, you know, that was me and this is me. And there's a sort of peace in that.
Beautiful. Are you ready for some quickfire questions?
Yes, I'm bad at these.
Okay, well, let's roll and give it a go. What album, book or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
Do you know, there's so many, but I'm going to go with Bleak House by Dickens. Had an absolutely massive impact on me as a child. Because of how, I mean, it's an amazing novel, but it is a story about people being trapped in systems and trapped in poverty and trapped in social systems that was that just kind of really sat with me for years.
Mm.
And I think probably did influence my kind of worldview quite a lot.
Do you reread it?
I haven't reread it for years, but I read it so many times because I read it loads when I was a kid, and then I studied English literature when I went to university. But I would happily pick it up and read it again. I must have read it like 50 times.
Ingrained. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. What's a saying that you live by and one that you'd put in the bin?
Might as well be hung for a sheep as a lamb is my motto.
Repeat that again.
You might as well be hung for a sheep as a lamb. And it's basically, if you're going to nick something and get hung for it, steal the sheep, not the baby sheep, which is smaller. It's a kind of old northern version of go big or go home, but might as well be hung for a sheep as a lamb is my absolute life motto. And sayings that can go in the bin, just literally anything to do with like, bootstrappy kind of wellness. When people are just like, you can do it. It's like you can't kind of positive attitude your way out of everything. Structural injustice exists, right? So I'm just like, nah. I'm like, structural injustice, greater than individual kind of ideation. Although our individual ideas and feelings do matter and do make a difference.
Of course, but you're so right. And I think we see more of that. It's almost a put up or shut up mentality, isn't it? When those sayings come about. Yeah.
It's kind of like, you're just not, it's like you're not imagining. You get it in cancer, which is it's famously in cancer world, right? It's called toxic positivity. Like you can imagine yourself well. It's that, or anything to do with that, where you're saying to a young person, you haven't got high enough aspirations. Or to it, you're telling people to somehow imagine their way out of a structural problem, like poverty and disadvantage, or a kind of factual problem like having a serious illness. So all of that sort of stuff, all of that stuff just absolutely enrages me.
Yeah, and it does
all
feel
of it in the bin.
Yeah, right in the bin. And the angst towards that feels so much more pertinent now and important to actually challenge it.
Yeah.
What's been the best adventure of your life so far?
Being a mum.
Being a mum.
It's just, there's probably being a mum, and specifically with my wife. Jen and I have been together 20 years this year. And we started by, my mum was dying and she helped me look after my mum. We just started dating and she gave up her job in America and came to help me look after my mum. And then I gave up my job and we went around the US and Canada for a year in a truck, so many states, so many national parks, maxed out our credit cards, stayed with friends, painted rich lesbians' houses in North Carolina when we ran out of money, like the full 9 yards. And we've kind of been on a big adventure ever since. And the chunk of that adventure that has been raising Dinka and Nene with her is the best. It is the best of a very good life.
Amazing. What 3 words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
Me is easier, although it relates. Clever, stubborn and kind.
Clever, stubborn and kind. Is there an order to them in terms of when you think about your journey?
Yeah, that order probably.
That order. Funny how that literally just rolled off the tongue.
Yeah. I sort of powered myself out of a lot of things when I was with my brain, when I was very little. So clever first, stubborn next, because I had to learn to endure. And I wasn't very kind when I was a teenager. I was horrible. Yeah. I was quite nasty.
Yeah, that's how I feel about my 20s.
Yeah, exactly. I was not I was not this person, right? I was not a friendly or kind person. I learned to be kind because I was a very kind little kid. But I learned to be kind again when I was in my 20s.
Yeah. I often talk about in some ways, I wish there'd been someone who would have taken the time to tell me that I could have been doing things a different way in my not so kind stages. But actually, would I have really listened to them? Or did I need to get them myself? And I know that that's the case.
Yeah, it's hard to be kind when you're not safe. I wasn't safe and it sounds like you weren't safe. And unkindness is like a massive defense mechanism, isn't it? It keeps people away from us. It stops people attacking us. It feels like a big risk. I remember when I started deliberately being kind or relearning to be kind when I went to university. I realised I could just leave everything behind that I didn't want to bring with me, and I left fighting Nancy and mean Nancy. And it felt like literally sort of painfully peeling off armour, and I felt so vulnerable. So I think it's if you're not safe, it's hard to be kind when you're not safe.
Yes, for sure. Let's fast forward a little bit. What
Mhm.
exciting things do you have coming up?
So at the minute, all sorts at work, we're just doing this kind of bit of thinking and change that is about our mission, and it's amazing. So it's kind of recommitting to showing up for LGBTQ plus children and young people in the way that they need us in the places they're at. And so some of that is doing more of what we've always done, kind of doing great group work and some one-to-one support. Some of that is about how do we work with local youth services, so the LGBT kids who aren't out still get support, or what can we do that's creative? What, you know, we're thinking about doing kind of short programs around kind of domestic abuse and healthy relationships. We've just put in a bid to teach parents about how to talk about sex with their LGBTQ plus kids. So just there's loads of super fun stuff at work. Trans Solidarity Alliance has got some big news coming up. Watch this space, can't trail it here, which I feel really excited for. That's going to just give us so much more of a platform to keep working. So that feels really exciting. And I'm off away for Valentine's Day for my 20th anniversary with my wife.
Hey, that's amazing.
20 years, Abe.
Where are you off to?
Just to a cabin in the woods nearby. We're going to look at woods.
Perfect. Love it.
We're going to
Love
look
it.
at trees and each other.
I love it. And with your love of trees, that sounds perfect.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to commune with trees.
As well as trees, what brings you joy?
I'm very good at joy. So I get lots of things. Love books, love reading, love people. I'm super obsessively interested in people. So just any interaction with people is interesting and joyful for me. Colour, anything that's brightly coloured, anything that's pretty, I'm a magpie. Basically, lots and lots of little joy hits all the way through the day, every day of the week, basically.
I love that. I'm going to show you my wardrobe because it's a very, very colourful.
I love it. Well, I always love your trainer collection because it's so bright. But yeah, I'm a complete sparkly things, interesting things. I'm like a real magpie, and it gives me just a lot of joy, a lot of pleasure.
Absolutely. I want to come to you for some practical takeaways for anyone wanting to either carve out a career in inclusion or perhaps create an inclusive space or project.
I'm maybe better on the career stuff because the space stuff is very broad.
Yes.
So you can think about inclusion in different ways. I come from more of a human rights background than a kind of DEI type background. I think that you can't fake it and do well over the long term. So pick something you actually care about and do that, would be my main piece of advice. And I mean, people do have good careers and they get really senior and it's a bit insincere, but that does not spark joy, as Marie Kondo says.
Yes.
You're not going to enjoy it. This is passion work. This is mission work, right? So figure out what you actually care about. Figure out what you actually believe. Think about that. Evolve your beliefs and do that, because then you get what I've had the privilege to have, which is for most of my career, I go to work every day and do something that I actually care about. Mm. That's where the magic is. Not did you get particularly senior or less senior, not did you get a promotion or not. Those things are important in different ways. But I think the magic in this type of work is if you're lucky, you get to do work that makes your heart sing. Yes. So figure out what makes your heart sing.
Love that.
And be honest. There's loads of issues that I feel like I ought to care about, and I just don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are not for me.
Fair. I feel like there definitely needs to be more honesty about what we're looking for in life.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And it's okay. It's okay if that, if that changes as well over time.
Agree.
Nancy, my final question for you is this. Do you have any words of encouragement or wisdom for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
Yes. You might as well be hung for a sheep as a lamb. Translation. Just go for it. Just go for it. Don't half try. Just run at the wall. And if it goes wrong, you'll bounce off and it'll hurt. And then you get up and you run at the wall again. Might as well be hung for a sheep as a lamb.
Amazing. What beautiful closing words. That quote is gonna live in my head. That saying is gonna live in my head. Nancy, I love spending this time with you. Thank you for saying yeah. Thank you for all the incredible work you do, for the way you champion people, including myself. Our community and allies are so grateful for you. And
you. And you too, right?
Thank you so much. And can't wait to see what's coming up next.
Yeah. Watch out.
See you soon.
Bye.